Hello.
Thank you for
Nice
seeing
to
me.
meet you.
You too. Should we do hands and whatever? Are we very formal? Or do we not? I don't know.
We don't need to be formal, but we also don't need to touch hands.
Fine, good.
Well, you'd have to be suffering unbearably, and you'd have to convince me that you were suffering unbearably.
And from what you said, that's good.
Hi, I'm Jo Bailey. I'm a forensic trained clinical psychologist, and this is my channel Brain and Beyond, where I talk about some silly things and also some serious things. Well, today's video is deathly serious, and I mean that in a very literal way. I'm talking about Dr. Ellen Wiebe. If you haven't heard about her, she is a very controversial figure, and she's going to divide opinions here as well. Some are going to see her as a compassionate professional offering end-of-life care, while others will call her a sinister figure who profits from death. But what kind of person can make a living from assisting people in dying and performing abortions? But not only make a living from it, actually find it amusing, to be able to laugh about it and be so desensitized that she comes across to me as almost evil.
So, Liz, right now you love life and you want to live. But there's lots of nasty illnesses you might get.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a forensic profiling approach to this and try and see if I can work out who this complex, controversial character is and ask, is she completely desensitized? Is she immoral? Is she normal? Is she just a medical working in this area? Or is it really something a bit more sinister?
Doctors love gratitude, and these people are the most grateful that I have ever cared for. So that's certainly part of it. That just they just I just get so many thank yous and so many hugs and.
Well, let's start with some basics. Dr. Ellen Wiebe is a Canadian physician. She specialises in medical assistance in dying and reproductive health services, including abortion. On paper, her work addresses deeply personal and controversial aspects of human existence. But what happens when these responsibilities are paired with humour or even laughter? And not just laughter. Have a look at this.
Apart from the fact I don't have the desire, I think probably I would be eligible under the Canadian law.
Well, you'd have to be suffering unbearably, and you'd have to convince me that you were suffering unbearably.
And from what you said, don't worry, I know you're not going to do anything here now. And I'm not always scared. Yeah, I'm not scared. Do you think some...
Before we watch it, why would people choose euthanasia? What would be their reason? Why would she assist someone with euthanasia?
The number one reason that people want made.
The number one reason is autonomy, control.
Rubbish. Autonomy and control. Rubbish. It is suffering, to end the suffering. Maybe to have control over their choices, but that's not the number one reason. The number one reason is they do not want to suffer. They do not want to be in pain. They don't want to put that suffering and pain on others that are caring for them.
And what?
And everybody's different in what they think of as autonomy and control.
Yeah. So that would be about not wanting to lose that in their lives.
Yes, control. They desperately want control. Like they want to say, it's now. And even we say, okay, well, I can get back here at 7 o'clock. Is that okay? And they'll say yes, and they'll be so grateful that they can skip the last 2 days of their life. And I look at it and think, what you really needed was some more drugs, but you want my drugs, I'll give them to you.
Now, does that just reflect a coping mechanism, an unusual personality, or is it really something a little darker? Well, from a clinical perspective, desensitization is a real possibility. I know in my line of work, I've come across some really dark things along the way, and we do use humor, but we don't use it publicly. We wouldn't use it in front of clients. We wouldn't use it around people who may not understand that. Now, she goes public, she makes videos and laughs like this, and of course that can come across the wrong way. I would never want one of my clients seeing me laughing about something. So look, I do understand it, and I think people that work in morbid areas, people that work around death will use different coping strategies. So look, it is a possibility that she has just desensitized herself. When someone is exposed repeatedly to intense situations, death, suffering, or moral dilemmas, their emotional responses can diminish over time. It's a survival mechanism. It's a way of functioning, trying to be as normal as possible in an abnormal situation. But when does desensitization cross the line into callousness or just pure coldness?
Others, it's not like that. I mean, when a mother is saying goodbye for the last time to her little children, it is so much a tragedy. But my part of it is not the tragedy. It's the horrible illness that's taking this person out at a time that we don't expect or want to see.
That is a lovely way of removing yourself from your active involvement in the death process. It's not her doing it, but if not for her, that woman may live longer. I mean, I read all about in the Journal of Noetic Science, there's a whole study about spontaneous remission. There are treatments, there are medical treatments. A medical treatment to take a life is against, it's counterintuitive, it's against what doctors stand for, is it not? Don't they stand for do no harm? My brain hurts watching this. My heart hurts. My heart hurts watching this.
And so it's just part of life is dying. 100% of us are going there.
It's a good point you make. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Ellen.
And she smiles as she says that. You can see the interviewer, particularly the male interviewer, he's just in shock. I think anyone is just watching her, and it's so incongruent. The way she responds is not contingent with the emotional response you would expect in that situation. It's very alarming. Laughter in this instance may be her way of coping, but it's really uncomfortable for me to watch. I think in some ways it alienates her, it removes her from the gravity of what she's doing. She's taking lives. Now, whether that's a compassionate action or not, she is still taking lives. That's the cold, hard facts. She has assisted people die over 400 times through euthanasia processes, and she has participated in hundreds of abortions. I mean, this behaviour could be emotional burnout. Maybe she wasn't always like this, I don't know. But it does seem to indicate a real detachment from reality, from the gravity of the situation.
This is, I think, for both of us here, a unique conversation. I mean, I certainly have never knowingly spoken to anybody, let alone a doctor, who has assisted so many deaths, 430, I think, over the last 7 or 8 years, which is an average of more than one a week. On a personal level, how has that affected you?
From a moral standpoint, we have to ask, where does her sense of right and wrong lie? Does she even have a moral compass? Or whether there is an overt disconnect there. Does she truly believe that she is providing a service and helping people? Is that truly what her value system is? Or is she motivated by other things, secondary reinforcers, money, power, medical prestige? I mean, I don't know. Is it control? Or is it even rebellion against social norms? I mean, I would have to interview her to know that. Another angle that you could consider is whether there are personality traits here. Is Dr. Wiebe even driven by altruism? Or do traits like narcissism or psychopathology play a role here? Psychopathy, for instance, is driven by a self-centeredness. It's driven by a tendency to view others as objects rather than as people. And it's driven by a really strong lack of empathy. And it's probably important to remember that not all controversial figures are going to fit neatly into these categories. I mean, the truth is often much more nuanced than that. So is Dr. Ellen Wiebe desensitized? Is she immoral? Or is she, as I dare say it, the devil incarnate? Well, the answer might depend more on your perspective than on hers. To some, she may be a necessary figure in a very broken healthcare system, and to some, she may be offering choices where no choice exists. But to others, and I am one of these others, she's an example of how far moral boundaries can stretch. And it's curious how far moral boundaries can stretch when someone is a doctor or they're protected by the medical industry. Either way, her actions and her demeanour force us to confront uncomfortable questions about life and death and humanity that lies somewhere in between. I have held back on giving my own personal opinions here, and I've sort of looked at it from a forensic profiling perspective. My personal opinions do come from a place of very strong values. Maybe I will let Matt Walsh say it for me.
So she has killed 400 people through euthanasia, in addition to the presumably hundreds of abortions she's performed in her career. This woman has single-handedly killed the population of a small town. And no human being is meant to experience that much death, much less administer it. If you have a conscience, this much death and misery would weigh heavily on your mind. You would be crushed by it. You'd be incapacitated by it. That's how a normal person with a soul would respond. But Ellen Wiebe doesn't feel that way. In fact, she is positively giddy. The very idea of human suffering makes her laugh. And I mean that literally. This woman has made killing into her life's work. She has a body count that history's most prolific serial killers would envy. And she's extremely proud of it. So I think you get the point by now. This is an evil person.
Well, now it's your turn. What do you think? Do you think Dr. Wiebe is a compassionate caregiver, an immoral professional, or would you go as far as saying she's the devil incarnate also? I look forward to reading your comments, and I will endeavour to respond to any comment that you leave. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other and have a very happy and peaceful day. Bye.